The battle for the Vakari homeworld began at dawn. Lisa's fleet attacked the orbital defense platforms first. These massive structures had protected the planet for centuries. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets. But they had never faced an enemy who had already beaten them once. Human ships worked in coordinated groups, focusing fire on one platform at a time. The Vakari defenders fought desperately, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. One by one, the great platforms fell silent. Their wreckage tumbled toward the planet below. Burning trails across the alien sky. The reserve fleet engaged Lisa's forces near the third moon. These were old ships crewed by veterans too aged for the invasion force. They fought with courage and skill, but they lacked the numbers to stop the human advance. Captain Danny Ortega led the assault that broke their formation. By midday, the reserve fleet was scattered and fleeing. Dr. Kevin Park worked from a communications station aboard the Relentless. He had prepared a message for the Vakari civilian population, translated into their language by captured prisoners. He broadcast it across every frequency, reaching billions of aliens who had never questioned their empire's actions. The message explained why humans were fighting. It described the ultimatum Zorath had sent. It showed images of human worlds burning, human families separated, human children crying in refugee camps. It asked a simple question. Did the Vakari people know what their military did in their name? Did they approve of the suffering their empire caused? Many Vakari dismissed the message as enemy propaganda, but some listened. Some had never seen what their conquests looked like from the other side. For the first time, they understood that their victories came at a terrible cost to innocent beings. The main orbital defense station remained operational. It was the largest structure in the system, armed with weapons that could crack a planet. Sergeant Pete Hawkins led a Marine assault team to capture it. Their transport ships dodged heavy fire as they approached. Pete was 42 years old with scars on his face and hands that told stories of many battles. He had joined the military after pirates killed his family on a colony freighter. He had fought in every major engagement of the war. He was not afraid to die, but he intended to live. His Marines breached the station's hull and fought their way inside. The corridors were filled with Vakari defenders, massive four-armed warriors in heavy armor. The fighting was close and brutal. Humans fell, but they kept advancing. They used the tight spaces to their advantage, where Vakari size became a weakness instead of strength. Pete reached the command center and killed the station commander in single combat. His blade found the gap in the alien's armor. The Vakari fell, and Pete's soldiers secured the controls. They disabled the weapons and opened the path to the planet. Lisa watched the station go dark on her tactical display. The Vakari homeworld now lay defenseless before her fleet. She had the power to burn cities, to shatter continents, to make this species pay for every human life they had taken. Her weapons officers awaited orders. She did not give the order to fire. Instead, she broadcast a message to the Vakari government. She addressed it directly to High Commander Zorath, knowing he would receive it wherever he was. She told him that his homeworld was now at her mercy. She could do to his people what he had done to hers. But she was offering something he had never offered his victims. A choice. Surrender now, she said. End the war. Free the conquered human worlds. Accept peace terms, and not a single bomb would fall on Vakari cities. Refuse, and his civilization would burn. She gave him 1 hour to decide. On the conquered human worlds, word of the attack spread through resistance networks. Cody Barnes received the news in his hidden bunker on New Stockholm. He shared it with his fighters, and they cheered until their voices broke. Their admiral had done the impossible. She had brought the war to the enemy's door. Vakari occupation forces received the news too. They realized that their homes, their families, their entire world was in human hands. Their morale collapsed instantly. Soldiers who had seemed invincible suddenly looked lost and afraid. Resistance fighters across every conquered world seized the moment. Cody led an assault on the main prison camp, freeing thousands of human prisoners. Other cells attacked military installations, capturing weapons and supplies. The occupiers were too shocked to respond effectively. Zorath received Lisa's ultimatum aboard his command ship, deep in human space. He read her words with shaking hands. His homeworld, his people, everything he had conquered for, everything he had killed for, was now under enemy guns. His officers watched him, waiting for orders. Some wanted to continue fighting. Others begged him to surrender. The fleet was divided between those who could not accept defeat and those who saw no other option. Zora thought about his long career. He remembered every species he had conquered, every enemy he had crushed. He had believed the Vakari were invincible. He had believed humans were insects. He had been wrong about everything. The hour passed. Zorath appeared on screen, his silver face twisted with emotions he had never felt before. Rage, shame, fear, and something that might have been regret. He spoke words that no Vakari leader had ever spoken in 3,000 years. He agreed to surrender. The peace treaty was signed 1 week later on the neutral station where Lisa and Zorath had first met. The terms were harsh but fair. All conquered species would be freed. The Vakari military would be reduced to defensive forces only. Reparations would be paid to humanity for the damage caused. Lisa became a hero across the galaxy. Species that had lived under Vakari rule for centuries celebrated her name. Statues were built on worlds she had never visited. Children were named after her on planets she would never see. But Lisa took no joy in her fame. She visited the memorial for fallen human soldiers, a vast wall with millions of names. She found the names of people she had known, crews she had commanded, friends she had lost. She wept for them all. Humanity emerged from the war transformed. They were no longer an unknown species on the edge of explored space. They had faced the greatest military power in the galaxy and won. Other civilizations sought alliances with them. Treaties of friendship and mutual defense. 1 year after the war ended, Lisa retired to a small farm on Earth. She grew vegetables and watched the sunset every evening. Danny Ortega took command of the defense fleet. Beth Lawson received the highest scientific honors for her shield technology. Cody Barnes became a symbol of human resistance, traveling between worlds to share his story. The Vakari, humbled and diminished, began the long process of rebuilding their society without conquest. Some of them resented humanity forever. Others learned to see other species as equals rather than prey. It would take generations to heal the wounds of their empire. Across the galaxy, the story of humanity's stand spread from world to world. How a young species had refused to surrender. How they had studied their enemy instead of fearing them. How they had united completely in the face of extinction. How they had shown mercy when they could have chosen vengeance. The Vakari had challenged humanity and paid the price. But the true lesson was not about war or victory. It was about what humans became when they faced impossible odds together. United by purpose, strengthened by sacrifice, they discovered something powerful within themselves. They discovered that together, they were unstoppable. 3 months passed after the Battle of Port Meridian. Zorath spent every day preparing for revenge. He stripped warships from every corner of his empire. He tripled the size of his invasion fleet. He forced his scientists to develop countermeasures against human shields. He executed any advisor who suggested caution. The new Vakari fleet numbered 900 warships. It was the largest military force assembled in their history. Zorath divided it into 5 attack groups, each targeting a different human colony. He would stretch human defenses until they broke. He would burn their worlds one by one until nothing remained. The assault came without warning. Vakari ships emerged from hyperspace at 5 locations simultaneously. Human defense forces were outnumbered everywhere. The new enemy shields blocked the frequency weapons that had worked so well before. Lisa's fleet could not be everywhere at once. The colony of New Stockholm fell first. The battle lasted 7 days. Human defenders fought for every mile of space, destroying enemy ships even as their own vessels burned. In the end, there were simply too many Vakari. The orbital platforms fell silent. Enemy troops landed on the surface. 12 million humans became prisoners of war. The Vakari rounded them up into camps, separating families and executing anyone who resisted. They broadcast images of the conquest across the galaxy, showing other species what happened to those who defied the Empire. Similar battles raged across human space. The colony of Titan's Hope held for 3 weeks before falling. New Geneva was bombarded from orbit, its cities reduced to rubble. Refugees fled deeper into human territory, their ships packed beyond capacity. Lisa watched the destruction from Earth's Defense Command. Every report brought more terrible news. Every day brought more deaths. She had won the first battle, but she was losing the war. Human ships were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Human soldiers were dying faster than new ones could be trained. She studied the tactical maps for hours, searching for a solution. The Vakari had overwhelming numbers, and now they had adapted to human weapons. Conventional warfare could not win. Something dramatic was needed. Something unexpected. The answer came to her in the middle of the night. She gathered her strategy team and presented a plan so bold that several officers thought she had gone insane. She wanted to attack the Vakari homeworld directly. While their fleet was scattered across human space, their home was protected by only a fraction of their normal defenses. Colonel Maria Santos pointed out that such an attack would leave Earth vulnerable. If it failed, humanity would lose everything. Dr. Kevin Park said the journey through enemy territory would take weeks, with no guarantee of reaching the target. Danny Ortega simply looked at Lisa and asked if she was certain. Lisa was certain. The Vakari expected humans to defend. They expected humans to retreat. They would never expect humans to attack their home. It was the last thing Zorath would anticipate. That made it their best chance. President Grant approved the mission after a long private conversation with Lisa. He understood the risks. He also understood that humanity was running out of options. Sometimes the only way forward was through. Lisa assembled a volunteer force from every remaining human fleet. Ships that could be spared from defensive duties joined her attack group. Many captains volunteered, knowing they might never return. They kissed their families goodbye and flew toward enemy space. Rosa Delgado led the scouting party once again. Her ship slipped through Vakari patrols, mapping safe routes through hostile territory. She found gaps in their sensor networks, paths that the overconfident enemy had neglected to monitor. Her reports guided the fleet safely through danger after danger. The journey took 16 days. During that time, terrible things happened on the conquered human worlds. But something else happened too. Resistance began. On New Stockholm, a teenager named Cody Barnes organized an underground network. He was 17 years old, tall and thin, with anger burning in his eyes. His parents had been killed during the invasion. His sister had been taken to a labor camp. He had nothing left to lose. Cody recruited other survivors. They hid in the ruins of bombed cities and the depths of abandoned mines. They salvaged weapons from destroyed military bases. They learned to fight in the shadows, striking Vakari patrols and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. Colonel Maria Santos coordinated these resistance cells from a hidden base in deep space. She sent encrypted messages with tactical advice and intelligence reports. She taught the civilians how to become soldiers, She gave them something more valuable than weapons. She gave them hope that the Vakari found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see. Their supply convoys were ambushed. Their communication towers were sabotaged. Their soldiers disappeared in the night. For every human they captured, 2 more seemed to appear. Zorath received reports of the growing resistance with fury. He ordered brutal reprisals against civilian populations. But the violence only strengthened human resolve. Every execution created more fighters. Every destroyed village created more enemies. Meanwhile, Lisa's fleet crossed the final stretch of Vakari space. They emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the enemy home system, just as the local sun rose over the alien homeworld. Billions of Vakari lived on that planet. It was the heart of their empire, the source of their power. The home defenses were formidable but reduced. Orbital platforms ringed the planet. A reserve fleet guarded the approaches. But most of the Vakari military was far away, fighting humans on human worlds. The homeworld was more vulnerable than it had been in 1,000 years. Lisa opened communications with her fleet. She reminded them why they had come so far. They were not here to destroy. They were here to end the war. They would give the Vakari a choice that no enemy had ever given them before. Surrender or watch their home burn. The human fleet advanced toward the Vakari homeworld. The final battle of the war was about to begin. The Vakari fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wave of destruction. 300 warships spread across the void, their black hulls absorbing the light of distant stars. They moved toward the human colony of Port Meridian, home to 12 million people. The planet hung blue and green against the darkness, beautiful and vulnerable. Zorath stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Eternal Conquest. He watched the human defense fleet on his tactical display. 60 ships. 60 tiny vessels against his 300. He almost felt disappointed. He had expected at least 100. This would not even be a proper battle. It would be an execution. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His face appeared on every screen, his red eyes glowing with contempt. He gave humanity one final chance to surrender. He promised that if they laid down their weapons immediately, he would be merciful. Only half of them would be killed. The rest would live as slaves. It was generous, he said. Far more generous than they deserved. Lisa watched his message from the bridge of the Relentless. Her crew looked at her, waiting for her response. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also something stronger, trust. They trusted her to lead them through this darkness. Lisa activated her own communication channel. Her face appeared on Vakari screens across the entire fleet. She looked small compared to Zorath. Her voice was calm and steady. She said only one word in response to his demand. No. Zora blinked in surprise. No species had ever refused him so directly. He had expected begging or bargaining. He had expected tears and promises. Instead, this small human woman simply said no. For a moment, he felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. The moment passed quickly. Rage replaced it. Zorath ordered his fleet to attack. All 300 ships surged forward, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The plasma cannons glowed bright orange, ready to turn human vessels into scattered atoms. The Vakari fired their first volley. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked across space toward the human fleet. It was enough firepower to destroy a moon. Nothing could survive such an assault. The plasma struck the human shields, and something impossible happened. The bolts did not penetrate. They did not explode against the hulls. Instead, they splashed against the shields like water against stone. The energy was absorbed completely. Beth Lawson's modifications worked perfectly. The human ships remained undamaged. Their shields glowed blue as they dissipated the absorbed energy. Not a single vessel was destroyed. Not a single crew member was harmed. Silence fell over the Vakari bridge. Officers stared at their instruments in disbelief. Their weapons had failed. Their plasma, the same plasma that had burned 100 worlds, did nothing. Zorath demanded an explanation. No one could give him one. Lisa watched the confusion spread through the enemy fleet. She had waited for this moment. She had planned for it. Now, it was time to show the Vakari what humanity could do. She ordered the counterattack. Human ships opened fire with weapons modified according to Dr. Kevin Park's research. The energy beams operated at the precise frequency that caused Vakari nervous systems to overload. When they struck enemy vessels, they did not just damage the ships. They caused every Vakari inside to experience blinding pain. The first Vakari ships began to fall. Explosions lit up the darkness as human weapons found their targets. The enemy crews were incapacitated by agony, unable to return fire or maneuver. Ship after ship went dark, spinning helplessly through space. Captain Danny Ortega led a squadron of fighters directly into the heart of the Vakari formation. His pilots were young and fearless. They had trained for weeks for exactly this mission. Their small ships were fast and difficult to track. They weaved between the massive Vakari warships like insects around giants. Danny targeted the command vessels. These ships coordinated the entire fleet. Without them, the Vakari formation would collapse into chaos. His squadron destroyed 3 command ships in the first 5 minutes. The effect was immediate. Vakari captains who had never made independent decisions suddenly found themselves alone and confused. The wedge formation that had conquered 62 species broke apart. Ships collided with each other as panicked crews tried to escape the killing zone. Officers screamed contradictory orders. Discipline disappeared. The mighty Vakari fleet became a scattered mob. Lisa pressed the advantage. She ordered her ships to advance, pushing deeper into enemy territory. Human weapons continued their deadly work. The blue beams struck again and again, each shot causing chaos aboard enemy vessels. Zorath watched his fleet die around him. He could not understand what was happening. These were humans, primitive creatures from a primitive world. They should be dying, not winning. His tactical displays showed impossible numbers. 47 of his ships destroyed or disabled in less than an hour. For the first time in his life, Zorath felt fear. Real fear. The kind of fear his victims had always shown him. He understood now why they had screamed and begged. He understood the terror of facing an enemy you could not defeat. His second-in-command approached him carefully. The officer suggested retreat. They could regroup, study human tactics, and return with better strategies. It was the logical choice. The wise choice. Zorath wanted to refuse. His pride demanded that he stay and fight. But his survival instincts were stronger. He ordered the retreat. The remaining Vakari ships turned and fled toward hyperspace. They left behind 47 destroyed vessels and over 15,000 dead warriors. The human fleet did not pursue. They had won, but they had also spent most of their energy reserves. Lisa ordered her ships to hold position and begin recovery operations. There would be time to chase the enemy later. Port Meridian was safe. 12 million humans who had expected to die watched the Vakari flee. Celebrations erupted across the planet. People danced in the streets and wept with joy. Children who had been told to hide emerged to see the enemy running away. Lisa did not celebrate. She stood on her bridge and studied the tactical data. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Zorath would return. He would bring more ships, better weapons, new strategies. The Vakari Empire would not accept defeat easily, but something had changed in the galaxy. Word of the battle spread at the speed of light. Other species heard that the Vakari had been beaten. Races that had lived in fear for centuries learned that the conquerors could bleed. Hope, long dead in many hearts, began to stir again. Lisa sent a message to Earth reporting their victory. She described the battle and the enemy casualties. She also warned that this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven they could fight. Now they would have to prove they could win. Lisa arrived on Earth 3 days after her meeting with Zorth. She went directly to the United Human Council headquarters in Geneva. The building was surrounded by crowds of frightened people demanding answers. Soldiers kept them back as Lisa's transport landed on the roof. The council chamber was filled with representatives from every human world. There were delegates from Mars, Europa, Titan, and the outer colonies. There were scientists, military leaders, and politicians. Everyone was talking at once. Fear hung in the air like thick smoke. Council President Howard Grant called for silence. He was an old man with white hair and tired eyes. He had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing like this. He asked Lisa to present her findings. Lisa stood before the assembly and activated the holographic display. She showed them everything she had recorded during her meeting with Zorth. She played his boastful words and his detailed explanations of Vakari tactics. The room grew quieter as they watched. The fear began to change into something else. It became focus. Lisa introduced her strategy team. Dr. Kevin Park stepped forward first. He was a xenobiologist who had spent his career studying alien life forms. He had analyzed the biological data Lisa gathered about the Vakari. He explained that their silver skin was sensitive to certain frequencies of light. Specifically, a wavelength in the upper blue spectrum caused their nervous systems to experience severe pain. This weakness had never been discovered because no one had ever captured a living Vakari to study. Colonel Maria Santos spoke next. She was a logistics expert with 30 years of military experience. She had mapped every Vakari supply route based on the information Zorth had revealed. She showed the council that the Vakari fleet depended on fuel stations positioned at regular intervals throughout their territory. If these stations were destroyed, their ships would become stranded. The council debated for hours. Some members argued for surrender. They said the Vakari were too powerful. They said fighting would only lead to extinction. Better to survive as slaves than die as free people. Others disagreed strongly. A young delegate from Mars stood up and reminded everyone what humans had overcome throughout history. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had rebuilt after world wars. They had crossed the void of space to reach new worlds. Humanity did not surrender. Humanity fought. President Grant listened to both sides. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. He looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from dozens of worlds. He said that the decision was not his alone to make. Every human being would be affected by this choice. He called for a vote. The vote was close. 53% chose to fight. 47% wanted to surrender. It was enough. President Grant declared that humanity would resist the Vakari Empire. The room erupted in a mixture of cheers and tears. The next 20 days became the most intense period in human history. Shipyards across every colony operated without rest. Workers slept in shifts, eating their meals beside the machines. New weapons were designed, tested, and produced at incredible speed. The blueprints were shared freely between all human worlds. Competition disappeared. Only cooperation remained. On the colony world of New Cascadia, engineer Beth Lawson worked on the most important project of all. She was 45 years old, with calloused hands and a brilliant mind. She specialized in defensive systems and had been studying Vakari weapons since Lisa's data arrived. Beth discovered something remarkable. The plasma weapons the Vakari used operated at a very specific energy frequency. If human shields could be modified to resonate at a counter frequency, they would absorb the plasma completely, instead of being destroyed by it. Beth worked 20-hour days in her laboratory. Her teenage son, Tyler, refused to leave her side. He brought her food and coffee. He helped test the prototypes even when the experiments were dangerous. Once, a shield generator exploded and threw him across the room. He got up, brushed himself off, and went back to work. After 12 days, Beth succeeded. She created a shield system that could withstand Vakari plasma fire. She sent the specifications to every human shipyard immediately. Within a week, the modification was installed on every vessel in the fleet. Meanwhile, Lisa organized reconnaissance missions into Vakari territory. Lieutenant Commander Rosa Delgado led these dangerous operations. She was small and quiet, but incredibly brave. Her ship was fast and hard to detect. She slipped through Vakari patrols like a ghost. Rosa discovered that Zorath was not preparing for a real war. He was preparing for a slaughter. His invasion fleet was large but poorly organized. His commanders were overconfident and lazy. They expected humans to run away or surrender at the first shot. They had made no plans for actual resistance. Rosa reported her findings to Lisa. The Vakari had a massive weakness beyond their biology and their supply lines. They had never fought an enemy who truly fought back. Their tactics were designed for terrorizing weaker species, not for real combat. They did not know how to adapt because they had never needed to. Back on the Vakari homeworld, advisors tried to warn Zorath about the human preparations. Scout ships reported increased activity at human shipyards. Communication intercepts revealed military mobilization on an enormous scale. Something was happening that did not match the behavior of a species. Preparing to surrender, Zorath dismissed every warning. He had conquered too many worlds to doubt himself now. He told his advisors that the humans were simply panicking. Weak species often thrashed around before the end. It meant nothing. The invasion would proceed exactly as planned. The 30 days passed. Human ships gathered at the border, hiding behind asteroids and moons. Families said goodbye to soldiers. Children drew pictures of heroes fighting monsters. Religious leaders of every faith prayed for protection. Atheists and believers stood together as one species facing extinction. Lisa stood on the bridge of her flagship Relentless. Danny was at her side as always. The crew was silent, watching their instruments, waiting for the enemy to appear. Lisa thought about her husband, dead these 20 years. She thought about the billions of humans counting on her. She thought about the arrogant alien who believed humans were nothing more than insects. She felt no fear. She felt only cold determination. The sensors detected the Vakari fleet emerging from hyperspace. 300 warships, the largest invasion force in their history. They came in their traditional wedge formation, exactly as Zorath had described. Their weapons powered up, ready to burn human worlds to ash. Lisa opened communications with her fleet. She told them this was the moment they had prepared for. She reminded them what they were fighting for. Their homes, their families, their future. She said that today, humanity would show the galaxy what they were made of. The first battle of the war was about to begin. The Vakari Empire had ruled the Orion sector for 3,000 years. They were tall creatures with silver skin and 4 powerful arms. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness of their ships. They had conquered 62 species and never lost a single war. Every race in the galaxy feared them. Every race bowed before them. They believed they were the supreme beings in the universe, and no one could challenge their power. When human ships first appeared in the Orion sector, the Vakari watched with mild curiosity. These strange 2-armed creatures came from a small blue planet called Earth. They had only been traveling through space for 300 years. Their technology was primitive compared to Vakari standards. Their ships were small, and their weapons were weak. The Vakari saw them as nothing more than insects wandering into the territory of giants. High Commander Zorath was the leader of the Vakari military forces. He was 9 feet tall with muscles that could crush stone. He had personally led the conquest of 12 worlds and killed thousands of enemies with his own hands. When he received reports about the human expansion, he laughed. He told his officers that these creatures would make excellent slaves. Their small bodies would be useful in the mines. Their quick hands would serve well in the factories. Zora sent an ultimatum to Earth. The message was simple and brutal. Humanity had 30 days to surrender completely. They would become property of the Vakari Empire. Their worlds would be absorbed. Their people would serve. If they refused, every human colony would be burned to ash. Every human ship would be destroyed. The Vakari would hunt them across the galaxy until not a single one remained alive. The message arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. Within hours, it spread across every human world. People gathered in the streets, staring at screens showing the terrible face of Zorath. Fear spread like a disease. Many believed surrender was the only option. The Vakari had never been defeated. What chance did humanity have against such ancient and terrible power? Admiral Lisa Monroe received the ultimatum while commanding the border fleet near the Kepler system. She was 53 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in the Mars Uprising 20 years ago. She had lost her husband in the Saturn conflict. She knew war better than most people knew peace. Lisa read the ultimatum 3 times. Then she called her aide, Captain Danny Ortega, to her ready room. Danny was young, only 31, but he was clever and brave. He had served under Lisa for 5 years, and she trusted him completely. Lisa showed him the message. Danny's face went pale as he read it. He asked what they were going to do. Lisa smiled slightly and said they were going to meet this Zorath. They were going to talk to him. Danny looked confused. He asked if she meant they were going to surrender. Lisa shook her head. She explained that the Vakari had conquered 62 species through fear and overwhelming force. No one had ever studied them carefully. No one had ever asked questions. Everyone was too busy running away or dying. She intended to be different. She wanted to learn everything about them before making any decisions. Lisa sent a message to Zorath requesting a meeting to discuss terms. She made her voice sound weak and frightened. She begged for the chance to speak with him personally. She promised that humanity would be reasonable. Zorath received the message and smiled with all 3 rows of his sharp teeth. He told his officers that the humans were already breaking. They would crawl on their bellies and beg for mercy. He agreed to the meeting. He would enjoy watching these pathetic creatures grovel before him. The meeting was set for Kepler's Rest, a neutral space station in unclaimed territory. Zorath arrived with 50 elite guards, the finest warriors in his empire. Their armor gleamed black and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They marched through the station like conquerors, forcing other species to clear their path. Lisa arrived with only Danny at her side. She wore a simple gray uniform with no medals or decorations. She looked small and ordinary compared to the massive Vakari delegation. Zorath towered over her, his red eyes burning with contempt. The meeting began in a large conference room. Zorath sat on a throne he had brought specifically for this occasion. Lisa and Danny sat on simple chairs across from him. The Vakari guards lined the walls, their weapons ready. Zorath spoke first. He described the glory of his empire in great detail. He showed holographic images of worlds they had conquered. He displayed the broken fleets of species that had tried to resist. He explained how the Quarks had fought for 10 years before being exterminated. He showed how the Malori had surrendered immediately and now served as personal servants to Vakari nobles. Lisa listened to everything. She nodded politely and took notes on a small device. She asked questions that seemed innocent and foolish. She wanted to know how Vakari ships traveled so fast. She wondered how their weapons worked. She asked about their supply lines and their command structure. She seemed like a student trying to understand a subject too complex for her simple mind. Zorath was amused by her curiosity. He saw no harm in answering. What could these primitive humans do with such information? He explained their tactics openly. He described how they always attacked in wedge formations. He boasted about how their plasma weapons could melt any armor. He revealed that their ships needed to refuel every 3 weeks at specific stations. Danny watched Lisa work with growing admiration. He realized what she was doing. Every question was designed to expose a weakness. Every innocent comment was probing for vulnerabilities. Lisa was mapping the Vakari military, while Zora thought he was impressing her with his power. The meeting lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Lisa thanked Zorath for his patience and wisdom. She said humanity needed time to prepare for the transition. She asked for the full 30 days. Zorath granted her request with a wave of his massive hand. He told her to use the time wisely. He said the humans should spend their final days of freedom saying goodbye to each other. Lisa and Danny returned to their ship. As soon as the doors closed behind them, Danny asked if she had gotten what she needed. Lisa pulled out her recording device. She had captured every word, every image, every tactical detail Zorath had revealed. The Vakari High Commander had just given humanity the keys to his own defeat. Lisa sent the information to Earth immediately. She included her own analysis and recommendations. The Vakari had weaknesses they did not even know about. Their arrogance had made them blind. They had never faced an enemy who studied them instead of simply fighting them. Back on his flagship, Zorath celebrated with his officers. They drank ancient wines and laughed about the foolish humans. Zorath declared that the conquest would be easy. He would add humanity to his collection of broken species. He would hang the human admiral's uniform in his trophy room. He did not know that he had just made the worst mistake of his long military career. He had underestimated humanity. He had revealed his secrets to an enemy who would use every single one against him. The countdown to his defeat had already begun.